When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting, the A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind Raw for Monday night, download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the mic.
We are live with Rewind Raw, John Pollock, Wai Ting. Still standing, technically seated. Seated? My brain has malfunctioned after this past weekend. It was a busy weekend is what I was trying to say. Was it not, Wai?
It really was. Yeah. I don't usually feel this sort of like pace, other than like WrestleMania weekend. And I'm just trying to think like what made it so different this time. Of course it's the start of the G1. But I think it's also having AEW Collision and maybe just continued access to just high quality wrestling, in several promotions all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, that to me was, I could take all of these individual shows and I have interest in all of them. In a small window of time, it is very daunting to try and tackle even 3/4 of this. And I'm kind of amazed at how much I was able to watch over the last 2 nights. Amazingly, the website is evidence that I watched Slammiversary, which I will take that evidence as proof that I did. It was 3 hours on Saturday night that I apparently spent watching Slammiversary, but it was a show that it was actually like, that's maybe the perfect example of this weekend is like, I don't have too much to complain about of anything. Like, it was a fun 3-hour show, but I wouldn't say there was anything on that show that would have cracked like the list of you need to watch or this slipped through the cracks. Like, there's such high level stuff. And I put a short list of it today in my update. And at the end of it, I'm looking at it. I was like, these like 4 or 5 matches alone, it's mind blowing that this happened from Friday night to Sunday night.
Completely. Yeah.
And yes, I included Speedball and Yoshihiko in my match list.
I think it's a very legitimate,
How about that comment from Speedball? He said he was more nervous for that match than any other match in his career, which covers a lot of ground for that individual.
Certainly does. I mean, but it also makes a lot of sense because you have nobody there responsible for the match except yourself and maybe I don't know what you want to call Yoshihiko's phantom guide, I suppose you could say, but I completely understand. So, yeah, this was, I don't know what honestly like made it so different compared to the usual, because we often, I think
we should reconnect with your video is getting a bit choppy.
Just the fact that everything was bunched up together, or is it just the start of the G1?
All right, are you hearing me okay, Wai? Your video is going a little choppy on us, so I don't know if we are navigating problems or if we can fight through this.
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. As long as you can hear me.
I think I'm on a delay.
Okay, well, we will reconnect with Wai and get everything back on track, because I know that can be frustrating for you, the viewer and the listener. But yes, this past weekend, we are going to go through some of the highlights from this past weekend between AEW's offerings especially on Saturday night. They had a 3-hour live block on TNT that included the 2 out of 3 falls match between FTR and Bullet Club Gold, as well as the finals of the Owen Hart Cup tournaments with Ricky Starks and Willow Nightingale winning. And if you blink, you missed it, but Jushin Thunder Liger was also on this show, which I want to ask you, Wai, what do you think would be more expensive? A round trip ticket from Japan to Calgary and back, or a Jushin Thunder Liger costume that you could have maybe just licensed out to some similarly sized performer to don the mask and red and white and black attire of Jushin Liger? This poor man. You know how long that flight is?
It's pretty long. Yeah. I mean, I hope he got to see some of the city. Maybe Banff is really nice nearby.
Dude, I bet they dropped this guy off at the airport. The second battle of the belts ended. He was like right back on his trip home to Japan.
Unless they film something afterwards, unless like he's sticking around and working an angle, on Dynamite or something, it was certainly one of the most perplexing things that I've ever seen involving any sort of like guest, celebrity. I understand the desire to want to maybe like turn Ricky Starks heel by doing something like that, but man, I think that could have happened in several other ways, without wasting this person's time.
Yeah, it was just an element that just seemed to be something that was not really figured in for anything. I mean, it just became an afterthought on the show. But I did think Collision was a pretty excellent show. I thought the tag match was incredible. Did you get a chance to watch the tag match? Did that one make it onto your screen this weekend?
Eventually it did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this was 58 minutes and 3 seconds. So they teased going the full 60 minutes. And man, this crowd in Calgary was excellent. And some of the reactions through like that crowd really was the fifth man in this tag match because they elevated so much. It did not drag for me. I think it's a lot to ask of people to invest 58 minutes in, but I would put this ahead of the match the previous week, and I would state both tag matches are in the small history of Collision would be your best matches that you have seen so far. This one being my number one.
Yeah, I think that's actually somewhat up for debate. I heard on Collision Course, Cino and Kate, or at least Cino, I believe, like believing that he enjoyed the first one more. And I can understand both perspectives. For some people, maybe an hour is just a little too long to drag, somebody's attention. But I can also see people feeling like the hour was well spent and that it was, it made for an incredible final few moments. Really, the crowd was hot for the entire time. I'm not even going to pick between the two. I think, what should be said about it is that, I mean, FTR continue to be tremendous professional wrestlers and maybe the best tag team in the world right now. But it's really this Bullet Club Gold, Juice and Jay team that's, I feel with the, they're one of the people that have gained the most from this extra airtime on AEW Collision. They really feel like they're gelling, and I think Juice especially has taken a huge step up in AEW.
I would state the same for Jay White. I think that he has, benefited the most from Collision. We're not going to spend too much time on all of these shows, but just on the CM Punk Ricky Starks match, how you felt about that, and especially the crowd reaction to Punk, and conversely, Punk's reaction to the crowd.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if he would have expected that type of reaction in Calgary, just given, Hamilton was pretty soft. Like, from what I recall, Regina seemed to be pretty neutral or pro Punk.
Mm-hmm.
But in Calgary, it was pretty hostile, or at least definitely more pro Starks than it was pro Punk. And
Did
I
that
don't
surprise
know.
you?
It did surprise me because I don't know if it was just something I think would have only happened in maybe a Toronto, but maybe just because more so he's such a Brett guy, I thought Calgary would be with him, but clearly that's not enough. And I think they have to really be considering further options for CM Punk as a heel right now, which maybe is not happening because they decided to do it with Starks, but.
That match was completely laid out for CM Punk to be the babyface, and I'd say that match it gave me a further or a deeper appreciation of John Cena in those situations, that he was able to go in front of those hostile crowds, and it would be so much he would play to that audience that wanted to hate him, but would also not abandon his core fans that are still watching John Cena, their superhero. And he thrived in those settings, really thrived. And they were some of the more memorable John Cena matches where he knew how to work those crowds. And a lot of baby faces would get thrown off by the crowd turning on it, whether it be Dusty when it was late into his run in Jim Crockett Promotions, or Shawn Michaels in the mid 90s. And Punk was certainly, I don't think, rattled by it, but at the same time, I don't think he was fully able to really take this and turn it into a positive for the match. It was more so, I think, him trying to win the crowd back. And this was an audience that was pretty adamantly it wasn't 100%, but it felt like 60-40 against him at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And And I think it is a bigger question. Like, as we see these, like Toronto, you can maybe just assume going into Calgary that Toronto, it's a unique crowd and they went against Punk. That's going to be a rarity. But Calgary was more of a surprise. And is this indicative of other big crowds? Like next week, they're in Newark, New Jersey, which is, that's the Prudential Center. And while they're not going to sell out the Prudential Center, you would hope that you're going to have a healthy crowd there. What's the reaction going to be like in a Northeast town in the US next week? And I do think like there is this gap between an audience that wants to vociferously hate this guy, but it's almost like they're not allowed to. And it's like the audience that supports him is sort of like in this limbo too. It's the elephant is in the room with him, and it's taking on a life of its own now with the crowds that I think are going to mimic Calgary and Toronto.
Well, at this point, we have to ask, like, what are sort of the negatives of actually turning Punk heel? Why not run with it rather than, play this game of like trying to guess whether or not this particular crowd is going to boo Punk or cheer Punk, and you're going to have to change course. Why not just run with him as a heel throughout the entire country? I certainly don't see the drawback. And you know what? If it calls to a bigger question, and I think it's that for the most part, CM Punk still seems like the bad guy in this entire brawl out situation. And there's a lot that I think the audience feels he hasn't necessarily answered for. And whatever you feel about the situation at this point, so what? Like all we really care about is just the on-air product, and why run against the go against the grain? Why not just have Punk be a heel?
Well, I think it's one thing to turn him, but if you're not doing the program everyone wants, is that really the most valuable? Like you're turning him, but you're not doing the program that everyone essentially wants. I think,
but you don't have to do. Well, I mean, we never got Brett versus Vince until after Brett came back, of course. But I mean, we did not get
Brett and Vince weren't on Raw and SmackDown every week.
But but Brett was in WCW and Vince was in WWE, and instead we got as a surrogate of Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin. You could definitely put somebody else in that role on Collision to face off against a heel CM Punk.
Well, I think they're going to continue to ride this. I think with Punk in this role, but I think it was interesting just to see that whole reaction and how it continues in the they are still booking like big venues for Collision, and we're going to see as well. Like it was a healthy crowd in Calgary, but Newark for next Saturday. I mean, all they've announced so far is the Trios Championship match, and that's a big building that they have to have on next Saturday night.
Ratings are going to be really important for last Saturday, and also especially this coming Saturday. Without perhaps something as big as CM Punk versus Samoa Joe or CM Punk in the finals of the Owen Hart tournament, what are they going to announce? That is this going to be a tapering of interest for Collision? This is every single week is important for Collision ratings.
Yeah, and we'll get a very interesting pattern on Saturday of how that 1 hour match does to hold people up for the first hour as well. Just some Impact notes. If you did miss the pay-per-view, they did 5 title changes on the show, with Kenny King winning the digital media title, Masha Slamovich and Killer Kelly winning the Knockouts tag titles, Leo Rush beating Chris Sabin in a minute 20. It was pretty much just an angle. Like he just attacked Sabin and pinned him very, very quick. Subculture winning the tag titles in the 4-way, and then Trinity beating Deonna Purrazzo to become the Knockouts champion. The only champion to retain was Alex Shelley beating Nick Aldis. And the big story coming out of that was after Shelley retained, Josh Alexander is back from his torn triceps injury, enters the ring announcing he is back. So that looks to be a direction that they will be going towards with Shelley. And this whole thing was him being built up as, is he just going to be a transitional champion and losing to Nick Aldis? So he retains. It was a pretty fun show from Impact, but like everything was, I would say, like, I didn't watch any of the matches and was like, this is atrocious or anything like that. It was like a good, consistent level. I enjoyed Shelley and Aldis. The Ultimate X had some spectacular moves in it. Trinity and Deonna had a lot of heat from this crowd in Windsor. It was a good crowd. It was a good show. But I think on a weekend like this, just having a consistently strong show that's, some good word of mouth, like you have to be a lot more to stand out in a very, very crowded field like a weekend like this.
I mean, at one time Impact, their only competition was a WWE pay-per-view once a month. Now their competition is an AEW that is very much satisfying and over satisfying, I should say, your
And
hardcore
free.
fan base, and free. You're competing with every other promotion. You're competing with AAA. You're competing with Noah. You're competing with New Japan on the same weekend at the very same time. So there are going to be weeks. Maybe this was unfortunate timing for that for Slammiversary, but I mean, name a good time, honestly, for the rest of the summer.
It's going to be really tough. Like, you don't have Saturdays free anymore. It's like you need a product that is going to cut through all of that, and it's going to be very tough. I'm sure TripleMania was affected, even though they had a very
Book
strong...
Yoshihiko, clearly the solution. We talked about GCW.
Well, we did. I mean, that cut through the noise, at least on this show, it did. On Saturday as well, you had El Hijo del Vikingo beating Kenny Omega, and it was a pretty spectacular match. I didn't think it was ahead of the Dynamite match, but this was still a really excellent 18 minutes that they had. I didn't think anything was wasted. It was 15,000 people plus in a big baseball stadium in Tijuana, and the atmosphere is always great on these shows, and that enhanced this. But I guess the major thing coming out of this was the post-show angle where Kenny Omega is being interviewed by the media, and Don Callis appears and cuts a heel promo on Omega, noting that he has lost 5 major singles matches since Callis left him. And then Takeshita jumps Omega, and suddenly Callis gets taken down by this individual that apparently was a security guard and was visiting and thought this was a real incident that was going down. Tackles down Don Callis.
So just to be clear, he was not working the event.
No.
He was somebody who's normally, for his other jobs, a security guard.
Yes. And he was here just as like a spectator, it seemed like, or visiting, whatever he was doing.
Right.
Takes down Callis and apparently just thought this was legit what was happening here. Like, of course, this man is just showing up with a scar on his head, and he's just lambasting Kenny Omega for losing 5 big matches lately. So, dude, Callis is taken down, and you can watch the video. Like, he's legit pissed about this. Like, you can see he has no idea what's happening here, and ended up, the Observer reported like he was going to San Diego to get medical attention. It doesn't seem anything too serious, but something that, I mean, just shouldn't have happened, but did.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
it was just so bizarre.
I know. Wrestling.
Don Callis has had some shit luck this year.
I mean, is it shit luck, or like, is this all really just like, in wrestling, it's weird where like terrible things can happen to you and somehow it can really work to your benefit. I think the scar is badass. Like, it's perfect for his character.
You think it's badass. If you woke up every day with that scar is like, that's a gnarly scar.
I'm just saying there are worse jobs to have than heel professional wrestling manager, with a scar like that. He looks like an anime villain right now, which is great. And even a story like this, I mean, in a way, like, just kind of creates good PR for this angle and traveling to Mexico and getting attacked by random fans, provided he's okay, of course. You never want to hear about something like this and people potentially getting seriously injured. But if he's okay, then play the whole thing up as a,
in a weird way, it was like the role reversal of the press conference we were just at after Forbidden Door, where one of the media members gets caught in the middle.
The media gets its revenge. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just stating that, like, here in this case, it was the opposite, where the performer is doing his job and someone is like unknowingly strikes the performer, and it was like the opposite here, with the thread being these press conferences after. I think these press conferences are just bad news all around. Everyone complains about them, and now people are getting hurt in all of them.
I think press conferences are just as important as the wrestling matches these days.
Well,
you see the G1 press conference? I mean, a lot of news coming out of everything,
and people got injured there as well. I mean, with people diving on one another and such. So, that was the news coming out. So I am sure that Don Callis will be there for Blood and Guts on Wednesday night, which, I mean, they have topped over 8,000 tickets for the TD Garden, which this is the move up for them. From usually they run the Agganis Arena. This is the move up to the major arena in town, the TD Garden. So Blood and Guts, and that movement coincided with the announcement of Blood and Guts and the participants. So this match certainly moved tickets, and they still have 48 hours to see if it goes any higher. This will be, as of now, for their TV, not including pay-per-views, this will be their 4th biggest attendance for TV this year. And and maybe they can touch the Seattle show, but they would have to get to around 9,000 for that.
That was Seattle Blood and Guts. Is that what you're saying?
This was Seattle at the beginning of the year, just first time in the market.
Do you have any idea off the top of your head, like how they did for previous Bloods and Guts?
I can pull up last year's for you because
just to gauge to see, you know, if it's an improvement, or I mean, I don't even know if they really care to measure by that metric.
Last year they ran Blood and Guts. It was in May, as I recall.
This is why I hate, like, you know, like testing John. I mean, it's for my own curiosity, really, but it does like put a halt to the show sometimes, because John, like, I'm putting him in a position where he really has to answer with facts. So apologies everybody for.
No, I'm recalling it now. Wasn't it at? Do you remember where Blood and Guts took place? Because I only have the cities here.
I don't remember what I watched last week, John. You know, I don't remember what I watched on Saturday. So I'm really the last person you should ask.
Okay, so someone in the chat room, tell me the city that Blood and Guts was in last year, right, and I will give you the number. But I mean, regardless, like 8,000 is on like the high end of
Little Caesars.
Little Caesars,
June 29th.
June 29th. Okay, that's what I needed. So it was bigger last year. That was also the first show in Detroit. That did very well. They did like 11,200 paying. So
gotcha.
They're not going to hit that for this year. But nonetheless, it's that was the first show in Detroit, and that one got off to it was a very healthy show for them. Anyway. Okay.
Thank you, chat room, for coming in.
That's what you're here for. And finally, on two other injury notes coming out of the weekend, we had Elton Prince suffering a shoulder separation on SmackDown during the tag match with the Brawling Brutes. He took a pounce from Ridge Holland, separated his shoulder, and continued through the match. Like, it was like, I certainly didn't notice it watching it, and like, he was involved in the finish, did the leg drop off the top, and I guess we'll see what the extent of it is. And obviously, like, shoulder separations, like, there can be a degree of how bad it is, but it's unfortunate because Pretty Deadly, they've gotten off to a very good start on SmackDown and they've been positioned well. And it would be really tough. I can't see Kit Wilson getting much on his own. I mean, he's pretty much in limbo until Prince is healthy. When
you're in a tag team where you dress the same as your partner, you're probably not getting booked until the other guy comes back. So,
and Tanahashi's busy.
Well, yeah, if it was any, I mean, the unofficial third member of Pretty Deadly, sure.
At the house show on the weekend, they were putting him with Austin Theory. So, I mean, that is a pairing that they've introduced on TV. You could get away with, you know, having that association that at least keeps Wilson somewhat busy.
You're absolutely right. They could definitely potentially do that. But, you know, I mean, the silver lining is that to an injury like this is that Pretty Deadly, in the short time that they've been on the main roster, have already achieved a whole lot. And judging by their booking, you know that they've really impressed the people in the back. And as maybe antiquated as a sort of like, you know, thought that this might sound, you know, they're going to be impressed by how tough Elton Prince was in gutting out the injury to finish that match, you know? So I imagine they'll treat him very favorably whenever he comes back.
And the other injury was to Bayley at the show on Sunday in Salisbury, Maryland. This was a 4-way match involving Asuka, Bianca Belair, and Charlotte Flair. And the spot, you can see it online, and it's in the news story. And it was a very awkward sequence where Asuka kind of just went down, and it seemed like Bayley was running towards her and like planted her foot and almost was not expecting Asuka's movement, like where she went down. And it just one of those freak things where it looks like her knee just locked or whatever. And Bayley goes down. There was no more physicality with her. And they shortly just went to the finish as the trainers were checking on her, and Asuka pinned Charlotte. And they helped Bayley to the back. And then she posted a photo. It was her right knee, and stating she's going to be all right. But I mean, she's obviously got to get checked out, and we're awaiting what the update is. Of course, definitely concerning when you're talking about a knee injury.
Totally. Absolutely. I just think back to a time where, like, you know, if something like this happened at a house show, I don't know how, like, if we would have had immediate cell phone footage of it, like, right away. Now it's like the moment it happens, everybody knows, and everybody's like, you know, like sending their, it's on news sites and all that. So, you know, let's say Bayley's out. Seems like her role lately, if she can make TV, is still to mainly be a mouthpiece for Io Shirai with this Money in the Bank briefcase. Maybe she can still perform in that capacity. So yeah, we hope that she is healthy, though, of course.
We're going to move on to this story involving Rick Steiner. So WrestleCon has booked the Steiners for WrestleCon weekend, which is in Detroit over SummerSlam weekend. And I'm not going to read the entire statement here. I think everyone knows the story involving Rick Steiner and Giselle Shaw from WrestleCon over WrestleMania weekend, which was, well, let's get into just a portion of this statement. And this is from Mike Bocchicchio from WrestleCon. And he says, "At no time then or after do we condone the remarks that Rick made in Los Angeles. We did not fail to act after we were notified, and as a result, we removed him from the convention for the remainder of that event. Rick's poor decision forever impacted his brand, relationships within the wrestling community, and alienated many of his fans. One of the positive things Rick did, and it was not publicized, is immediately apologize. He apologized to members of the WrestleCon staff. He apologized to many of his fellow wrestlers and offered apologies to the members of Impact Wrestling staff, and chose to hear from him at a private mediated event. Giselle chose not to attend Rick's apology, which we 100% understood, supported, and still support to this day. She had no obligation to hear anything from Rick, nor should she ever feel obligated to accept any apology from him then or now. Now that we are 3 months beyond this event, I feel that Rick learned a lot from this huge mistake. I know it's easier to cancel people when they make mistakes than to forgive and help educate. However, sometimes I think it's important that we give people a second chance. That being said, Rick will forever be on a zero tolerance scale moving forward at any of our events. If we are proven wrong that he has not learned from his mistakes, we will enforce a permanent ban. That is not to imply that everyone gets one free strike. We continue to strive to have an environment where everyone feels safe and included. If we are faced with issues that compromise that environment, we will take all necessary action." So that was a portion of the statement. And this has drawn a lot of criticism from people because this has been, Rick Steiner has been radio silent since this event that happened at WrestleCon. And, you know, from this statement from WrestleCon is that privately he has reached out and apologized for it. But I think for a lot of people, it's simply like this was a really, really ugly incident, like out and out, like transphobia at a public event with a woman who did nothing but attend this event, who was, I mean, when you look at this, I mean, here is somebody that is at this event as a talent that is like humiliated in front of colleagues, in front of fans, and seemed completely unprompted that he just started screaming these like slurs at her. And, you know, for the side of Giselle Shaw in all of this, would you expect Giselle Shaw to be going to WrestleCon to sign? Probably not, putting herself in this situation. So if anything, it's like Giselle Shaw is probably losing out on a booking, because why would she ever want to put herself in that kind of an environment again, that she is not going to probably be at WrestleCon, I would assume. I'm not going to say like Rick Steiner needs to just disappear forever and that people cannot learn, and that can, like, my whole thing about punishment is that at the end of it, someone is aware of their mistake, that is educated to where they went wrong. And if we have one less transphobic person, that's a great thing to have. I don't know if Rick Steiner, I can't tell you if Rick Steiner has done the work and is someone that is truly remorseful or not, because I've heard nothing from him. And I do feel that this is somebody that does have to confront this beyond a private Zoom call or however he reached out to those. I appreciate that he reached out, but is that something that is necessarily, I guess you're just looking at this from a lot of different angles of, like, I can't even state like this is this giant superstar that's going to bring all this business to WrestleCon. If anything, I could argue that this is probably going to lose WrestleCon business rather than add to it, that they are putting their neck out and bringing this person back without, even missing like a cycle of WrestleCon events.
Right. Yeah. I think 3 months is definitely too soon. Like there hasn't even been WrestleCon events in between that time. So you're basically telling somebody that this man didn't really suffer any sort of punishment. Beyond that, even though like maybe it seems like Rick Steiner perceives this as a private matter, from what I gathered, it was
a public incident
in a public forum, and it's certainly become a public story at this point. And therefore, if he feels like he wants the public to accept him, and if WrestleCon wants the public to accept him, well, Rick Steiner needs to make that apology publicly in as big of a forum as possible. And then at that point, it's up to the public to decide if they are comfortable with it. Until then, I think this backlash is very much warranted. I didn't hear the apology, and it shouldn't be made for me. The other thing is too, Giselle Shaw was not present there. She did not choose to go to the apology, from what I gather, and I'm not comfortable like giving my support to this inclusion of Rick Steiner at WrestleCon until I hear Giselle Shaw's opinion on it and her acceptance of the apology.
Yeah, I mean, like at a time like this where, I mean, the amount of transphobia that exists, to me, it's something that I think if you were a trans person, would you feel comfortable going to this event that unprompted you could be subjected to something like that? I'm not saying that Rick Steiner is going to repeat those actions. You would hope not. But at the same time, I feel that like you are, I think, like the message like comes out here. And I also take issue with like including the word canceled, which is, I hate this word. And if we sub out cancel for disciplined, I think it has a much more meaningful distinction of.
Yeah, where's the alliteration though? Discipline culture. Come on, not as catchy.
Not as easy, but I think it's easier to discipline people when they make mistakes than to forgive and help educate. Rick Steiner, I mean, to be quite honest, like, yes, this was a news story in wrestling. He's exceptionally lucky that did not become a larger story. This did not affect his real life job. This did not impact him to the extent that he is not going to lose an autograph session out of it. So the idea of him being canceled, I'm sorry, that's laughable. He is someone that, I mean, was, I think, quite rightly scorned within wrestling circles, but this did not pop up and become a major news story of, a wrestler of significant fame. I think you would argue that based on when you grew up, engaging in just utter transphobia in a public setting in front of people to another fellow wrestler. And I mean, he did not receive any kind of discipline or, loss of any type of income. So I don't think you can really look at this as somebody. And again, a lot of these stories, so much of the attention goes to the person that committed the incident rather than the person that was on the receiving end of it, and how that person feels. So I would much rather hear of a Giselle Shaw. And I think for something like this, at the bare minimum, if I were Rick Steiner, I would be stating that if I'm attending this, 100% of my fee is going towards a charity of Giselle Shaw's choosing. I am not profiting a penny off of this event. Yeah. I think that's the bare minimum.
Bare minimum, sure.
Let's quickly talk about the ratings notes from the weekend. SmackDown doing 2,309,000 viewers, a 0.62, so down from the trial episode, but still a very healthy number for SmackDown. And what was interesting was to see the quarter-hour breakdown from WrestleNomics, and once again, the high point, Jey Uso with Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa peaking in the show by a significant margin at 2,571,000 viewers and 949,000 in the demo between 9 and 9:15. Women in the key demo were down 35% this week, and where they really fell down, and this is certainly what attracted the audience that was most attracted to last week's episode, was the 18 to 34 audience, which was down, women in that demo, I should state, down 50% this week. So this is it's a sizable portion of their younger female audience that was down this week. Of course, this week's episode will be on FS1, but you do have Roman Reigns on that show. And I think they will do, by FS1 standards, a very good number. And tonight was sold out for Raw. SmackDown is sold out on Friday in Orlando at the Amway Center. So a lot of big business they are doing going into SummerSlam. Rampage on Friday. We skipped over Rampage. Wai, what was your highlight?
I'm told that Athena versus Willow was really good, and I might be checking that out, in the lead up to Death Before Dishonor. But beyond that, I haven't heard too much.
Well, the show did 310,000 viewers and a 0.10 in the demo. These, in the normal 10 p.m. Friday night time slot, they're second lowest ever. And Second lowest behind June 9th, a few weeks ago, that was up against the NBA Finals. So this week they were down 16% in viewers and 20% in the demo. But the really interesting breakdown is males versus females on Friday. So in 18 to 49, men were up 6%, women down 53%. 18 to 34, men up 22% this week, women down 65% from last week. And in 35 to 49, men were up 1%, women down 50%. I thought that was astounding that men were equal, if not up from last week, and women were down in gigantic numbers.
What do you attribute it to?
Men were not missing Rampage. I don't care what's going on this weekend.
What
I'm
were the women
hour
watching?
of AEW in on Friday night.
And what were women watching?
Not Rampage, I guess. And not SmackDown in record-setting numbers either. So if I have to state that women have other social options on Friday night, these numbers backed it up. That is what I'm saying.
All right. Okay.
As someone that did watch Rampage over the weekend. All right. Those are the ratings notes. Collision will be out on Wednesday. And quickly, coming up over the next few days, we've got another G1 show on Tuesday with myself and WH Park. We will be on the cafe Tuesday night. That show will be headlined by Kazuchika Okada against El Phantasmo. We also have Sonata against Shota Umino, Will Ospreay against Yoshihashi, Ren Narita against Yota Tsuji, and then Taichi against Tangaloa, Gabe Kidd against Hikuleo, Kenta versus Great Okan, and Kaito Kiyomiya, whose birthday was this week, taking on Chase Owens. So that is Tuesday's lineup. I think he's 26. Yeah.
Wow. Spring chicken. Yeah. For those of you who are unaware, we did release yesterday's G1 review show of day 2 on the Post Wrestling Cafe or Post Wrestling free feed, I should say. Also here at youtube.com/Post Wrestling. So just to give you guys a bit of a Monday morning preview of what type of coverage you might get from us at the Post Wrestling Cafe.
Yes, and we'll go over the schedule in a minute, but NXT on Tuesday has Wesley and Dominic Mysterio that they promoted a lot on Raw tonight for the North American title. Nathan Frazier and Dragon Lee against Los Lotharios. Kiana James against Gigi Dolan. Scripps and Axiom against Bronco Nima and Lucian Price. But the big return, Tony D'Angelo is out of jail and returns to NXT.
All right.
He got parole by way of a wrestling outcome last week with Channing Lorenzo. And finally, Dynamite on Wednesday has Blood and Guts, MJF and Adam Cole against Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia in the Blind Eliminator final, and Hook against Jack Perry for the FTW title with a setup on one of the AEW shows.
Rampage
it was.
Yeah.
That you thought was a great setup.
It was great.
The best 12-second promo of the year.
You know, there are several characters in AEW that I think are a bit challenging to like sort of create regular segments for. And Orange Cassidy for the longest time was one of them. They figured out a great formula to make him one of the best champions in all of professional wrestling right now. And I think they are starting to really find it with Hook, where he's a guy who is not your, going out there, cut a 10-minute promo type of wrestler. He is a type of character that, the less he says, the cooler he is. And they shot this great vignette of him just eating pasta and just like basically cutting a promo to the camera saying, Jack Perry, I'm done running. You want a match?
I hope the woman sitting like diagonal from him was with him and not just a person just trying to have her lunch. And who's this guy yelling at a camera?
The tables look close enough that I think she was a close associate of Hook's, but really cool way of treating Hook. So yeah, let's see if there's any interest in that match.
Yeah, so 3 matches announced thus far for Dynamite, and obviously the lion's share of the episode will be focused on Blood and Guts. And the schedule for this week, we have 8 shows this week on the cafe.
So excluding all the shows that you get on the free feed.
Yes, I counted them up, and this is for all the complaining we do about how much there is to cover. I mean, there's a lot on. There's a lot for everybody.
I will say it's different for a podcast. Okay, people are doing other shit when they're listening to a podcast. You could do your laundry, you could be driving. You have to watch something actively. You can
be sleeping and listen to us. That's fine.
So basically, there is no such thing as too many podcasts, and certainly no such thing as too many Post Wrestling Cafe podcasts.
Well, there is a lot of wrestling this week, including Super Clash 85 that will somehow get watched and reviewed this week on the site. But we will have 4 G1 shows coming your way up at postwrestlingcafe.com Tuesday night with myself and WH, Wednesday with Karen Peterson and Bruce Lord, Friday with WH and Eric Marcotte, and then Sunday, Karen and Bruce are back again. So that is all off the top of my head.
That's really impressive, actually.
Yes,
you nailed them.
I've got these drilled into me. But we've also got some of your favorites. Collision Course. We've got MCU later. Friday night, Wai and I are going to watch the Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view. So we'll go live at 11 right after the pay-per-view. Wai is going to double screen with SmackDown. So you did volunteer that. So
I will do that. I can't guarantee, really great in-depth analysis that you used to from me, but, we will talk about any sort of big.
I want you to have SmackDown on mute and tell us what you think happened on SmackDown.
Okay.
That should
so
be
just,
a review.
Just make up like Jey Uso's promo. Okay.
That's it. That's all we need from you. But we'll mainly be focusing on ROH on Friday night. But Tuesday, free and for everybody, it is the wellness policy. And Wai, what are you guys going to be snacking on this month's edition?
I see what you did there. We will be talking about health and fitness with Justin Goodman, who is, if the name sounds familiar, Jordan Goodman's brother, who happens to be, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think he's a licensed dietitian and also a personal trainer. So basically, he knows a lot more about health and fitness than I do. Somebody who spends hours and hours and hours sitting down and watching professional wrestling and then talking about it and then making podcasts about them. So, I don't know if you can relate, John, but I'm certainly in a point in my life where I could, with a baby as well, I've really lost track. I've really lost it. I've gained like 5 pounds since like November. Yeah, it's shocking. You don't really see it all, underneath this, but like below this, I'm just a mess. So Justin, help me out. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 3 p.m. for free, youtube.com/postwrestling. We'd love to get a lot of your guys' thoughts as well on it. So you can call in if you're a patron. I'll be sending that link out later on Tuesday morning.
Okay, so look out for that. And don't want to overwhelm people. We're not going to go over all of it. But Wednesday, Pollock and Thurston will be live at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. And joining us will be G1 Stats himself, Chris Samsa, the Chris Samsa on Twitter. And he will be joining myself and Brandon to talk about the G1. This might be the closest you ever hear to John Pollock talking to someone about math. And we will see how the man dissects all of the stats. This might be the interview that I just sit back and listen to Brandon and Chris.
I mean, I can't wait,
once they get into like Python scraping, I mean, I might just have to take a seat and listen.
Yeah.
So all of that is coming up. The full schedule up at postwrestling.com. And I want to state on this show, a major thank you to all of the contributors on our site. A lot of people did a ton of work over this weekend covering all of these shows, some great podcasts, some great written reviews from Jack Winan doing the TripleMania show, John Kleinchester, Dave LeClaire, all of the crew at Post Wrestling. A major thank you. In addition to our stalwarts, Neil Flanagan and Andrew Thompson, Andrew uncovering the best story of the weekend, that Sonata feels that the current New Japan crop, they lack sex appeal.
I guess it's a good counter to, Naito's quote about him having no star power. Well, at least I've got sex appeal.
That's it. That's the showdown that everyone's waiting for. Sex appeal versus superstardom. Okay. On that note, as we are almost 45 minutes deep here, it's time to talk about Raw from the State Farm Arena in Atlanta. 11,406 according to WrestleTix, a sellout. And man, was this a crowd?
Sounded like it.
This crowd sounded great, and that main event, this Atlanta crowd was amazing. Like this was, I state this in like the most positive way. Like this was a Dynamite crowd, like an AEW Dynamite crowd for this main event. They were so red hot for that tag match.
I mean, what Dynamite crowd works, I would also say like an old school Georgia crowd from
this was the Omni. Yeah,
sure.
They transferred it over. Well, they were all here to see Cody, who comes out and there's a welcome home chant, and he brings up Brock, wants him to accept his challenge, and he'll be out here whether it's now 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, or at the end of the night. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to do 4 quarters with Cody Rhodes throughout the night and until Brock comes out. And part of me was like, when you say it out loud, it's like, this show is so long. We can do this now. We can do it at 9 o'clock. We can do it at 10 o'clock, or we can do it at the end of the show. Could you imagine a first-time viewer just tuning in? They're a brand new converted viewer, and this is the segment that introduces them to Raw of like, what am I sitting in for? I'm going to be in bed by 10.
I mean, I do wonder how many people have like decided not to jump into professional wrestling because they realize how much of a time commitment it is every single week. If you even just want to follow one promotion.
Well, this year WWE is bucking that trend because they are growing their television audiences. So it's a credit to them. He points out his mother in the front row, Michelle, and then talks about how his relationship with Brock can be described by 2 words: hard times. But it won't be hard times for him tonight. It's going to be hard times for Lesnar. And he loves everyone and enjoy Monday Night Raw. I mean, this guy could not. I mean, he was like running for mayor of Atlanta here. Hugs his family, and then all of a sudden, Lesnar's music plays, and Cody is on the ready, but Brock doesn't come out. It's a psych out. Then the music plays again, and Cody storms to the back, looking for Brock. You hear a big crash, and a chair flies out into the arena, and Brock emerges and destroys this guy with chair shots. He applies a Kimura onto Cody and accepts the challenge. I'll see you at SummerSlam, bitch.
Did he say bitch?
Did
we get a bitch?
He did. We got 2 bitch drops on this show from our former MMA competitors.
Who's the other one?
Ronda.
Oh, okay. Well, they teach you that in the UFC, don't they?
That's it.
I thought it was a pretty effective and simple segment here. You know, just getting the babyface attacked in front of his mother always works. I don't think it ever doesn't.
Do you know if this was 2005? She's taking an F5.
Yeah. That's not too that did kind of happen, right? To Mae Young multiple times. Well, not the F5, but
remember when they were trying to heat up JBL, so they did an angle where he caused Eddie's mother to have a heart attack at a house show.
I feel like I blocked a lot of that storyline out of my memory, but I'll take your word for it.
It happened.
Yeah, I thought it was all done pretty well. You know, I think going to the basics with the heel Brock Lesnar and a babyface as good as Cody is all you really need. Cody cut a really nice hometown promo. I feel like we haven't heard shaky voice Cody in a while. It felt like at a time in AEW, he would like every promo, he was like near tears and about to cry. And it almost felt so, I don't know, or so over the top that you just started to like dislike him. And in WWE, he hasn't really pulled out shaky voice Cody too much. And I thought tonight was an appropriate time.
It's best to save the shaky voice for like your hometown, your family's in the front row, rather than like, we've got a video game announcement, or you know what I mean? Like with Cody, it just became, I'm fighting on behalf of the United States against a boxer that cashes his checks here in America.
I made weight.
The famous promo of all promos.
Yeah.
Gunther and Matt Riddle. This is a non-title match with Imperium banned from ringside. And Riddle, they stated the difference here between Money in the Bank is that Riddle's ankle is 100%. So let's go over the checklist here, okay? Riddle's ankle is 100%. The Goons are banned from ringside. There is nothing blocking Riddle's path here to Gunther. And Gunther just annihilated this guy. He scoop slams Riddle on the floor. They go through the break. He chops the hell out of Riddle, who comes back with kicks, a series of knee strikes, and then a running knee to the back of the head, goes for the floating bro, and Gunther gets the knees up. Big drop kick that I think Graves called a Tyrannosaurus drop kick, and hits the power bomb to win in 8 minutes and 13 seconds. I enjoyed this more than the pay-per-view match. It was short, but it was a sprint for the time it lasted. But I don't think Riddle has any more opportunities at this guy. He was just completely outclassed in this feud.
I mean, I think at this point we understand like Riddle's place in this company. Not having Randy has really hurt him. You know, he's really just a guy that I think they can only push so far as his current incarnation of his character. It's really hard to take that sort of surfer bro seriously as a title contender, at least beyond a certain level. And but you know what you can rely on him for is really good wrestling, really great matches, and great chemistry with somebody like Gunther. Makes for a great person for Gunther to beat up and chop and to, you know, deliver like a pretty satisfying TV match here. So good matches always between these two. I think these have been strong showcases for Gunther because Riddle is so capable as an opponent, and it's been upping the quality of wrestling on Raw in addition to Owens and Zayn.
Gunther stands on top of the announcer's desk with the title around his waist, telling the fans this is the greatest night of your sad lives by getting to see the greatest intercontinental champion of all time. And Riddle, he states Riddle is done and he is building a legacy Drew McIntyre will fall victim to. And that will set up our face-to-face next week between Drew and Gunther. A lot of face-to-faces in this build-up to SummerSlam. Jackie interviews Raquel and Liv, and they're stating how Sonya and Chelsea Green don't like to follow the rules. We're ready for anything. So Rhea walks in and says, "What about me?" And Raquel stares her down, and she headbutts Liv, and this leads to a fight between Rhea and Raquel, with Raquel getting her knee kicked in by Rhea, and she goes down, holding on to the knee, and the question of whether she'll be okay to defend the titles tonight. Going to break, there's a trailer for this new Cody Rhodes documentary that is premiering in 2 weeks on Peacock. It is American Nightmare, the Cody Rhodes story, and they have interviewed everybody for this. So this looks like a interesting piece, and it'll be coming out the week of SummerSlam.
What was the last time they did even a Peacock exclusive documentary? You know,
the Ric Flair one last year. They did one.
Oh, a whole year then. Wow. Like that's yeah, like during the WWE Network days, it felt like we had these sort of specials, you know,
they were doing these all
week.
The time.
But it's cut back a whole lot when it came to Peacock, and this one I'm definitely going to be making time for. It feels like it's a big deal, you know. I wonder how much they get into AEW, how they navigate really a whole lot for over his past year. He's had a really interesting run.
I'm sure it'll all be addressed. I'm sure this will be a very strong piece from the company. Judgment Day come out. They are better than everyone. Everyone thought we were going to break up. That was nonsense. Rhea calls herself the most dominant woman in the industry, and she is unbeatable. Finn and Damian, she states, will become world champions. And tomorrow night, Dominic becomes the North American champion. And Dominic is booed down by this crowd in Atlanta as he says he's going to beat Wesley. And Priest guarantees that he will be world champion, but looks at Baszler and agrees Baszler gets the first crack at Seth Rollins. So they're still keeping that rift alive, even though they have a temporary truce. Baszler says he will be listening to what Rollins has to say later. Their issues will never be over until his arm is raised as champion. And then Dominic yells in Spanish as Zayn and Owens come out, and they state that they get to shut Dominic's mouth tonight. And Priest challenges them to put the titles on the line tonight. And Zayn asks Owens to weigh in, so he screams and yells and agrees to put the titles on the line in the main event tonight. So we go from non-title match to title match.
I could have sworn these two already won some sort of like tag team, you know, title match, number one contenders match or something, but whatever. Sure. I mean, maybe moving a little bit fast here with this, because I felt like for sure they would have a bigger stage to challenge for the tag team titles, but who's to say they can't after this anyway?
Yeah, with only a couple shows left until SummerSlam, Owens and Zayn do feel like the odd man out for SummerSlam this year. That there's just not that obvious match for them on the card, and it's starting to fill up that show. That maybe they will just be, whether it be an appearance on the show or just there on TV. And we've seen Hunter's style of booking is it's not everyone under the sun is put onto these pay-per-views. Some people it's just not their month to be on.
A lot more promotion this week for NXT, and maybe that's just because Dominic actually has a match, or at least a title match, So yeah.
Raquel is in the trainer's room, and the trainer says technically she is cleared, but wishes she would not compete, which is quite the conundrum to be presented with from a doctor. You shouldn't fight, but I'm not saying you can't. So if you're not, you're kind of scared.
Yeah.
Come on, doc. And Pierce, who no concern for liability, is like, it's on. We've got a quarter hour to meet, and the match is next. So out goes Raquel and Liv to take on Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville for the women's tag titles. And early on, Raquel is not selling the knee, but eventually Deville goes after it with a chop block. And we got several near falls in this match that I will state this was much better than the tag outing from Green and Deville last week, which was not good. Deville yanks Raquel off the apron, chop blocking her, and the Unprettier is countered by Liv with a roll-up, but as Green kicks out, she is knocked into the ropes where Deville hits her from the floor. A second Unprettier is hit, and man, did this crowd bite on this near fall. And then a third Unprettier and a running knee by Deville keeps Liv down in 5 minutes and 23 seconds as Raquel is out on the floor with her knee injury. And we have new women's tag champions in Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green.
Yeah, I thought this match turned out pretty good. I thought Deville especially had some really good aggression and speed in this one. I thought she looked better than usual. I didn't think Raquel and Liv would drop the title so soon, especially not against a team that is, sorry to say, kind of like the jokes of the division. A division of 4 teams, really, to be honest. So maybe not that surprising, but Deville and Green have not exactly been pushed as like threats here. And if there's any hope of this tag team title division being taken seriously as a wrestling division, I don't know how much you can put into that hope with these two as champions. But then again, you don't have too many teams to go with anyway. So maybe they're just a setup team for. Could it be a Chance and Carter? Can you name it? What are the teams? Can you name the whole division right now?
They were all in that tag team turmoil match a few weeks ago.
A lot of those weren't even teams.
No, you're right. You've listed off most of them. I will say this, it does free up Raquel and Liv to work with Rhea. I think that you can do the setup with Liv and Raquel at SummerSlam, and you can do many rematches after that. And it is a better position, I think, for Rodriguez and Liv to be positioned with Rhea, and these tag belts can get flipped back and forth many times. Like Chance and Carter will probably all these. If you're a team, you'll get a run with these belts.
Sure, and that's just kind of sad to say because I feel like it both with the men's and the women's tag team titles, they have not felt like actual promotions for wrestlers. In most of these cases, both Owens and Zayn and also Raquel and Liv, they're almost always better off as singles rather than being, basically sort of relegated to the tag team division, which has always continued to feel lesser in the WWE. So that's somewhat unfortunate.
Saxton interviews Green and Deville, and Deville calls Raquel's injury fake, and Deville says that they're going to run this division as Green keeps listing off people to thank, including her bronzer, who got a shout out. Saxton does a sit down with Seth Rollins, and he said that the world title deserves a big marquee match at SummerSlam, and he starts listing off contenders, including Baszler, Priest, Gunther, Drew, and others. And Baszler interrupts. He wants his rematch. Their issues are not over, and tells Rollins to talk to Pierce to make the match. Rollins tells Baszler to stop living in the past. He says, "I'm not living in the past. I'm living in chaos." Which I would love to use this in like everyday conversation. Stop living in the past. I'm not living in the past. I'm living in chaos.
What does that mean exactly? How's that a counter to stop living in the past?
Well, he's in the present. His present is chaos.
You can't just say any random word and say you're living in it as a counter to stop living in the past.
I'm not living in the past. I'm living in an apartment.
Okay. Yeah.
This is not a great line. He will do to Rollins what he did to him, hurting him, laughing in his face, and then alter his career forever. And Rollins says that the title is bigger than a personal vendetta, and it's bigger than each of us. And we can settle our score without a match, and I dare you to take a shot. So Baszler leaves, and then as Rollins is taking off his lav mic, Baszler created chaos by attacking him with a chair. And Rollins didn't see it coming. And with that, this was really smart because Baszler got his match at the end of this.
I mean, that's the philosophy of those who live in chaos, I guess. Maybe line aside, I thought Baszler was actually really good here. The setting allowed him to talk slowly and seriously, and I think it's
no
really
singing.
He did not sing. No, I was talking about
saying
Baszler.
If they were doing this in the ring, you would have the singing to combat.
That's a great point. You're right. Yeah. And I thought Baszler really came across like he was obsessed with beating Seth Rollins as if it was some sort of sickness. So I thought it was effective.
The Viking rules match between Alpha Academy and the Viking Raiders. Titus O'Neil is out on commentary because
I think the answer was pretty clear after watching this match. Titus has like a real, I mean, I don't know if there's like a close proximity with him, like being near Atlanta or something. I don't know, but I think the tone that he provided as like basically a guy watching and like reacting huge with his deep voice to this match kind of provided like a really nice levity to this comedy match, essentially.
Well, at first I didn't think we were going to get to see this because this entire arena was full of smoke from the Vikings entrance, but it cleared up. And dude, this turned into a super entertaining match.
Mhm.
Okay. And they had to work for it. Okay. I talked about how great this crowd was. The beginning of this, like they did not seem interested in this, but the guys worked so hard that this crowd got into it in a big way. The first sign of it was a table being brought out, of course, and everyone goes nuts for that. There's all these shields set up around the ring, and they asked Titus if he's ever been hit by a shield, and he says, I've fought the shield before, never hit by one, which was a good line. And Ivar hits a reverse cross body, and Otis catches him and slams him to the mat, which was damn impressive of a guy of that size being caught. Ivar then hits a moonsault to Otis off the top. Gable breaks it with his own moonsault and then lifts up Ivar for a bridging German with Eric diving in for the save. Then there's a diving headbutt by Gable onto Eric. Valhalla breaks it up, which sets up Maxine for her spot, landing a high cross, and they get the jacket back. And as Maxine puts on the jacket, she is speared through the table by Valhalla. Gable then runs into the shields in the corner, lands on the floor. Otis is left alone, and Otis was awesome here, taking on Ivar and Eric. He was just a one-man machine and hits the Caterpillar. Valhalla slaps him on the buckle, and the Vikings hit a double powerbomb, hitting Otis in 10.5 minutes. But this so overachieved.
Completely. Yeah. I thought this was excellent. The production of this match was really well done. The spots with Maxine and Valhalla again got the biggest reactions here. The moonsaults from Ivar quickly followed by the one from Gable, and then followed up with that very impressive German suplex. Really spectacular, memorable spots. And I definitely admit I was not a fan of this type of comedy throughout this entire feud, but they've consistently received great reactions from this crowd, and especially for the in-ring performances, and especially for these Maxine spots, which continue to just like be, I would say, highlights of not just the feud, but really the show. And that was the case for this match too. A match that I didn't think would be any more than comedic plunder ended up being a highlight of this Raw.
Yeah, and a match that got 10 minutes on this show, which up until like the 10-15 or so, there's about 23 minutes of wrestling on this show. It was very much on a lot of talking segments, a lot of like angles to set up SummerSlam stuff. So, and thus what followed here was Shayna Baszler and Nikki Cross, 19 seconds of Baszler submitting Nikki Cross, and Ronda Rousey appears in the skybox, and the crowd goes mild. And if you are not a fan of Ronda Rousey promos, this was like jumbling like 500 words into 30 seconds here as she went over describing how it's much harder to walk in the back door of a profession rather than the front door, which has the pavement and the steps paved for you to enter from that person who came ahead of you. And this is Ronda Rousey. She's talking a mile a minute here explaining this analogy, but I got it. And explains that she was not handed anything. She was thrown to the wolves here in WWE and took the tougher path to come here and did it in a fraction of the time, just like she did in MMA. She's the greatest combat sports athlete ever, and Baszler is simply a knockoff version of her. So Baszler comes back stating that in the ring, doing what we do, I'm a better Ronda Rousey than you, which I'm trying to understand. I didn't quite understand it.
I think I understand it. I think the idea of Ronda Rousey is that she's a completely dominant figure in whatever sport she chooses. Predominantly, I would say MMA. Like when you say, I'm the Ronda Rousey of MMA. I mean, if you really watch MMA, you probably don't really love that analogy, but I mean, to the common person, I think a lot of us still think of Ronda Rousey as like, a bit of a sort of legendary figure in the sport. And that's essentially all Shayna is saying. I am as good as you are in MMA, but in pro wrestling, which is not really true judging by accolades, but
it's not, but,
but she's a very good wrestler. And I'd argue maybe better than Ronda. And
then Baszler tells her to waltz her heavy ass into the ring. So at this point, I am.
Who's the heel? Who's the babyface up until this point, John?
It's 1,000 1,000,000% Shayna Baszler is the heel, the entitled heel who is trying to degrade all of Ronda Rousey's legitimate accomplishments that she has done to pave the way
She also
for
attacked
fighters and for
Ronda.
wrestlers in this company.
Yeah,
100%.
She also attacked Ronda first, from behind. And Ronda's retort, I thought on paper was really sound. It was full of like logic, like Shayna had a great promo. Basically, this is the sort of weird part because Shayna's promo felt very much like a babyface promo,
and Ronda's delivery is so heel.
Yeah. So here,
even though the words are like the delivery and the words are opposites.
This whole thing has been a mess from the jump. Okay. And that's not even including like the rush nature of the turn itself. But let's just say like everything went well. Ronda, like Shayna turned on Ronda. So Shayna comes back, cuts a great promo about why she attacked Ronda. But it was so good that it got the crowd entirely on her side. She's basically saying, I fought hard. I went the long route, the route that you should have to get here because I love this. Ronda comes back, I think, with a really good retort about why her quote unquote short route, backdoor route was actually much tougher because she had to win the Olympics, had to dominate in MMA, was thrown to the wolves, and became, like a pretty good professional wrestler in half the time that Shayna took. The difference, however, though, was Ronda's delivery is just awful. She's never been good at delivering really any sort of promo, but especially this sort of like long, like well written, but requires like somebody like too written. It does not at all sound natural for somebody who speaks like she does. Anyway, clearly at some point they see the crowd reaction and the crowd wanting to boo Ronda anyway, and they did what, John?
Rousey declines to waltz her heavy ass into the ring as Baszler challenged her to. No, unless they want to make me. And she sits down and refuses to fight Shayna Baszler. So Baszler goes into the crowd and goes after her when Rousey says, I'm going to do you a favor and get you booked at SummerSlam. I'll see you in the Motor City, bitch. And that's how the segment ends, with Rousey just doing like a 180 in the middle of this segment.
Yeah.
I was lost. I was like, I put my hands up. I'm like, I don't know what these two are doing. They're just doing their own thing. And it's like, whatever.
I feel like every interaction these two have, somebody turns. I could count 4 turns already, like in the body.
In a promo. Yeah.
Sure. It's a fucking mess, and a quick Google or Twitter search for Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler will tell you exactly the same thing. Everybody is confused about who is the babyface and who is the heel here. But I will say clearly, like judging by maybe Ronda's refusal, basically Ronda playing the coward here, she is supposed to be the heel, I believe, from this point forward in this feud.
This week, Way.
This week,
watch
right.
Next week. It's going to be like, I don't know. Listen, we're going to get to this match, and hopefully they're going to have this great match, and you're not going to remember any of this.
Well, they need to set the stage for the crowd, like to boo the person that they want to boo. And clearly Ronda Rousey is the person everybody wants to boo. So I think this was a good course correction. The promos, though, I don't know how really either of them got approved. As good as the Shayna promo was, did not work for her as a heel. And as good as maybe Ronda's promo tonight was on paper, certainly did not work for her. So
I'm supposed to be rooting for the woman that called her opponent fat. That's who you're rooting for.
You're supposed to root for the person who attacked the other person from behind. Yeah.
That's
for no reason. Yeah.
All right. So we're up to date on this. Jackie Redmond is with Ricochet and is challenging Logan Paul to show up next week. It's like, didn't we see this last week?
I thought this was a match. Like, did they say a match or what?
They later stated that Logan Paul returns next week, but they did it in such a way that you could totally have taken this as he's challenging him, and then it was Logan Paul answers his challenge, and he'll be here next week.
Okay, so Logan
But
Paul,
I'm not believing they're doing a match next week.
They said Logan Paul accepted on social media, but they did not say that he accepted.
The challenge was from the show up.
Okay, so another face-to-face, basically.
Yes, after we saw one last week where Logan said, I'm not interested in this match. So then he said, well, why don't you talk to me again? Okay, yeah. I'm going to fly to Tampa for us to redo this again.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is what happens when you have limited dates for a guy, and they don't want to promote a second face to face, I suppose.
What if Ricochet revealed that he has he knows people with Health Canada and he got Prime recalled?
I think he'd be the biggest
and if you face me, I will let your drink continue to be distributed in Canada, and to hell with these kids under the age of 18.
Right. Well, in NXT, I think that would work because, we know the legal system in the NXT universe is very much tied to the result of a professional wrestling match. I don't know if it works for Canada the same way.
Yeah. Did you hear Logan Paul's response to this?
No. What?
He claimed that, number one, he said, we're not even distributed in Canada, so this is all a lie. And
what? Yeah. You mean the energy drink or the other one? Because I see the hydration one all the time.
I see all of them. They're at my corner store.
Right.
So anyway, then he said, it's all fake news. It's not even real. I mean, this was Health Canada that came out with this and announced this. And he just turns it into we are cutting into market share, so they're trying to stop us. But this is all like made up nenews.
You gotta love the fake news defense. He really is a natural heel, everybody.
Oh, he totally is. You watch this thing, I'm like, this guy, it's like I would at first blush, it's like, what an idiot, but the man knows exactly what he is. He knows how to exactly engage his audience against like news, against the media. So anyway, that's the state of Prime. MizTV. This was really interesting because he beat someone by the name of Tommaso Ciampa last week. Not familiar with him, nor was Miz, so he repeated the line to get the name properly pronounced. So he at least knew he screwed up the name. Not that I expect this to be ever used in some big video package down the road.
I don't like clearly like the line mentioned means that the feud is still alive, but you saw really outside of this no evidence of this.
Tommaso has not gotten the memo that this feud is continuing because he's moving on to the perpetrator of last week. He mentions all the celebrities he played golf with over the weekend, insults Pat McAfee as well as Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks, and brings out Becky Lynch and asks if she has lost a step after several big losses since Don Callis abandoned you. And she responds by throwing all of the chairs out of the ring and screams to Miz that she has lost many things, including her mind over the last year, but not a step, and demands that Miz bring out his mystery guests, Trish Stratus and Zoe Stark, or he's going to lose his tiny testicles. He's going to castrate him in this ring. That's what she threatened. So Trish and Zoe come out, and Becky demands a rematch. Trish calls her a bratty toddler and asks, is that Rue in the ring? And Becky does not like the name of her child being used on cable television. And they have both beaten Becky and they have both beaten Becky. So Trish sees no impetus to take a rematch. I'm done. I am moving on. And it's time for you to finally thank me. Becky calls her a self-centered psychopath. And Becky reached out to Trish when she was at her weakest. She owes nothing to Trish. And I have spent more time in this company. I've done more for this company than you. And you need to prove you're as good as me. And this leads to Trish. Okay, I accept.
But I mean, it took an insult about like her like flipping her hair on Instagram. Like that's what did it, you know?
Don't ever insult my Instagram, or else I will just answer with emotion and not my head. So Trish will accept on several conditions. Becky first needs to beat Zoe. She agrees. Then if she loses to Zoe, she has to get on her knees and say, thank you, Trish.
Yes.
I think that was the step for that. Yeah. And get a tattoo across her chest that reads, thank you, Trish.
Yes.
This is all for the Zoe match?
That's how it came across to me because I don't think Trish said any other.
This is the Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley stipulation.
Right. But except like I don't think he made Tyron Woodley get on his knees to.
No, he only had to get the tattoo like on his finger, not across his chest.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Becky agrees to all of this. So what we're getting is Becky and Zoe next week, and on the graphic it was if Becky wins, she gets her rematch, and that was it. Which I think everyone assumes will happen.
And didn't want to write all this bullshit.
I don't know. Does this tattoo extend to SummerSlam?
What do you mean? Like if she
If she
loses
to Trish, does she have to get the tattoo, or just to Zoe?
If she lost to, oh, okay, you're right. They haven't clarified that. I think if she passes Zoe, she doesn't have to get the tattoo. I mean, it's possible that maybe Trish meant if you beat Zoe and then you lose to me, you have to get a tattoo, but I don't know. In either case, I think there are stipulations in pro wrestling that work, like putting your hair up on the line, putting a mask up on the line. Like these are big stipulations and they usually work. Putting up a tattoo on your chest in pro wrestling is a step too far. Nobody will buy this. And it just really took this. I mean, people didn't buy it anyway, that Becky would possibly lose to Zoe, but I think they just took it a step too far by saying you have to tattoo "Thank you, Trish" on your chest. It's silly.
So maybe they should just go ahead with it then.
They have to do it now. Change the booking on the fly. What if like a ref, like what if like Zoe forgets to like lift her shoulder, and then the referee.
What if there was an injury in the middle of the match? Legit.
Sure, yeah, and referee has to count to 3. Then how are they going to stick to it? She has to get the tattoo.
She has to, for the sake of pro wrestling stipulations. So they attack Becky, but Becky fights them off, takes off Trish's nose protector, and nails Trish, and then decks Stark and headbutts her with the face mask on, and that ends the segment. So we will get Zoe Stark and Becky in Tampa next week.
I thought like Becky overall was. I enjoyed her here. She came out here really pissed off throughout the entire segment and had a really like strong energy about her, completely focused on revenge. I thought Trish overall did well too, like in the early portions of this, being very calm in contrast and just basically taunting Becky. But I kind of felt like the segment maybe lost, some points when they carried out those pretty ridiculous stipulations and maybe a little bit of awkwardness in the physicality as well. So as a feud, I would say it's an improvement over Becky's, several other programs she's had recently, but I wouldn't say it's hot up until this point.
Shinsuke Nakamura took on Big Bronson Reed, as he is now known.
I thought he had another nickname.
Big.
Like, wasn't there something else they were playing with? Like what was he? Some childhood nickname?
Jonah? I don't know.
Not Jonah. Chat room, I think at least somebody in there will know what I'm talking about.
Well, he's Big Bronson Reed now, okay? He's going to be Big Reed by the end of the year. Reed does the vibration kick in the corner, mocking Nakamura, and he's controlling until Nakamura comes back with kicks and a dragon screw. Reed hits a Death Valley driver. Crowd is getting behind Nakamura, who then drops Reed on the buckle, stopping the tsunami, and hits a knee off the buckle and is setting up for the Kinshasa when he is met with a running cross body. And right as Reed hits it, in runs Tommaso Ciampa, who attacks Reed in 7.5 minutes for the DQ. And Corey Graves yells, inadvertently, Ciampa earns the win for Reed. I'm like, what was inadvertent about this? Did Ciampa, like, just a gust of wind send him into the ring mid-match to cause a disqualification? This was absolutely premeditated.
I guess he wasn't thinking about giving him the victory.
Does he not know how wrestling works after all these years? He's been doing this for like 20 years.
Well, when you're angry, you have a lapse in judgment.
Maybe he thought he was in New Japan for a minute.
Where these types of attacks don't.
Just turn your back towards this. Ignore this portion of the match.
Maybe. Well, these were 2 former G1 competitors, so maybe he thought he was suddenly in New Japan. Thank you, Pete in Texas, Mr. Nice Guy. Weren't they pushing that for several weeks?
I'll take your word for it. Was that an actual nickname they were using for him?
Yeah.
Well, now he's big.
In promos.
Big Mr. Big. Maybe that could be his moniker.
I feel like that's taken.
It is, but
so is Miz still attached to this? I thought the thing we were getting was like Miz and Reed versus Ciampa and Gargano. So what's happening there? Is Gargano ever going to make his appearance here? It seems like there's some sort of detour now with Nakamura. It's a direction I didn't expect, and as usual, came via a pretty unimaginative and pretty unsatisfying DQ finish.
Yeah, it was yeah, they were having a fine match, and the audience was into Nakamura in this match. And then Saxton is with Nakamura afterwards, and he is tired of people getting in his business. And he screams when Saxton asks him a follow-up and about what he did to Ciampa afterwards, and he storms off. So I like this from Nakamura afterwards.
Now, is this teasing a Nakamura heel turn, or is this just giving his babyface character some edge?
I could see him getting turned as a result of this.
He just turned babyface, and he's been a successful babyface.
Time to turn him. I like this from Nakamura, to be quite honest. I think, honestly, though, he's a very sympathetic figure here. Like, why are you getting involved in my match unprompted? I mean, I would think he has a very justifiable defense here. Like, at the very least, Ciampa deserved a shot in the face.
Yeah. I think he's been on a good run thus far after this brand split, but he's been stuck in a mid-card position. I'm hoping this is more of a just, way to elevate his current babyface character.
Where did Rick Boogs go?
He got injured, and then he got drafted.
Back.
He got drafted to Raw at the same time that Nakamura got. Oh, sorry, he got drafted to SmackDown at the same time as Nakamura got. He was with Elias, was he not?
Yes.
No, he was with Elias on Raw. Then he got drafted to SmackDown while Elias became a free agent.
I don't know how you remember this. You're right. Elias is a free agent, right?
Yeah.
What happened to all these free agents? Where's Von Wagner? He's just back in NXT.
Well, he's on NXT. Yeah. Well, that's part of the free agency realm, I guess.
Okay. All right.
Free agency just means that we have no idea what to do with you.
We have no idea what to do with you. Odyssey Jones. When are we going to see him? All right. So next week, Becky Lynch against Zoe Stark. Face-to-face between Gunther and Drew McIntyre, and Logan Paul returns. We're getting 2 face-to-faces.
4 faces.
4 faces and a potential tattooing in Tampa. And then just like that, they announced Seth Rollins and Finn Balor for SummerSlam. So done. Balor's objective is accomplished. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn against Damian Priest and Dominic Mysterio. I thought this was the highlight of the show. A great match involving these 4. Rollins jumps Balor before the bell rings and fights him to the back. So there's no Balor. Rhea stays out there. And Zayn gets distracted by Rhea, allowing Dom to hit a baseball slide dropkick, and Priest chokeslams him on the apron, sending us to the break. Heat on Zayn until Owens gets the tag, and he's going wild. Senton to Priest. He does the Eddie Guerrero shuffle and splashes Dominic off the apron, but then lands on the knees of Priest for the swan dive. Crowd is getting all over Dominic with "you suck" chants, and Owens hits the pop-up powerbomb. Priest makes the save. Crowd is going ballistic, and then the crowd starts singing Olay as Zayn is in, and there's a Rana off the top by Priest. Zayn stops the 619, and then Owens hits a somersault off the apron as Zayn hits a Tope Con Hero, and Rhea sends Owens into the steps, distracting Zayn, and Priest snaps Zayn on the rope. Dominic rolls him up, and when he kicked out, this crowd, they bought on this as a near fall. Rhea gets on the apron when out of nowhere, Liv Morgan attacks her, sending both women into the timekeeper's area. So Rhea is subdued, and we get a exploder to Dominic, a stunner on Priest, and the haluva kick keeps Dominic down in 15 minutes and 51 seconds. This crowd was tremendous for the duration of this match, and I thought this was a great match.
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's all the more impressive considering these are still 3-hour shows, and these are crowds that are sitting through a whole lot of content before getting to this point. I thought this match was outstanding. This might have been one of Owens and Zayn's best tag team title matches. And it was a crowd that was already engaged from the jump, but they just kept growing and growing and growing to higher levels. I love the way that they integrated Rollins at the beginning of this and Liv at the very end to help equalize the match for the faces. Liv in particular, I thought was a really awesome surprise, just given how her role in this Rhea Raquel feud hasn't really been all that big. But to make her the final difference maker for the end shoots interest in her right up, even though her role in this seems to really just be a setup person for Raquel. Still, this was an extremely satisfying conclusion to several of the stories that took place throughout the course of the show, including the Balor and Rollins setup, Rhea costing Liv and Raquel the titles. I thought Raquel and Rhea was really built up well throughout this episode through the loss of the tag team championship, and also Liv here attacking her at the very end.
Yeah, I can see them certainly doing Rhea and Liv next week or the week after, and Rhea takes her out going into SummerSlam, and Raquel's alone and probably working this knee injury going into SummerSlam on top of it. So I thought overall this was a pretty good Raw when it came to building up SummerSlam. All of the building has been done, and now it's just confirming the matches that where the direction is for so many of these different programs. Really enjoyed the main event. I enjoyed Gunther and Riddle quite a bit, and some of the promo stuff on the show, it was hit and miss. I think Shayna and Ronda is just, I still find it entertaining. It's not like I'm not enjoying these segments, but probably not for the reasons that they are aiming for it to be as such. And the Viking rules match, that was something that I just did not think twice about on this show. And that was a real pleasant surprise of how hard all four worked, which shouldn't have been as much of a surprise, but it was impressive to see. Like, this audience did not, like, the gimmick seemed to be a hindrance to the match, and they overcame that. And it was just a really, really fun 10-minute match.
Yeah, for me, the crowd tonight in Atlanta gets a huge part of the credit for how well this show came across throughout the entire 3 hours.
They should get sellout crowds every week. That'd be a great idea.
That would be wonderful. Sure. But yeah, Atlanta was great, and I think made every single segment, greater, including the Viking Raiders match, including the main event tonight, including the Cody segment, and everything but maybe the Ronda promo and maybe the Trish Becky segment wasn't great. But it all comes down to whether or not they're telling a good enough story, and in some cases they are, some cases they aren't. Do you have do we have like sort of a rough card right now for SummerSlam? Because I think officially confirmed Brock and Cody. We've got Rollins and Baszler officially confirmed, but also Rhea and Raquel seems to be a direction. Becky, Trish.
Becky, Trish. That's 4.
Ronda Shayna.
Ronda Shayna is 5. Ricochet, Logan Paul. Roman Reigns and Jay. That's 7 we're up to at this point. Who are we? There's the chance they could do this U.S. title match at the end of this tournament. That's
Riddle. Oh, sorry. Gunther, Drew.
Gunther and Drew.
Yeah.
That brings you up to, like, we're talking about 8 or 9 matches right there. I don't imagine them going much more than like 9 or 10 matches deep on this show.
Yeah.
So that's like the lion's share of your card is essentially a book. And you've got the women's 3-way on SmackDown for the title.
You're right. Yes. So 9 matches already. Wow.
So we're like the whole card seems pretty much set up unless they throw anything more into it. But yes, we've got 2 more weeks until SummerSlam. So thankfully we'll have some wrestling to watch in a few weeks.
I've been lacking, really. So good.
So what is our plan that weekend? What are we going to watch in Detroit?
So we are going to be going to Detroit, for those of you unaware. Looking forward to it. We're going to be watching SummerSlam, John. I think that has been confirmed.
Yes, it is.
We are also going to be going to the GCW show on the Friday. So that means that particular night's Raw and SmackDown might be delayed. You might not even really get a SmackDown review, but we will be talking about our experience at GCW.
Okay. Yes, we will. We'll look forward to that and check out GCW. Let's go on. If you have any super chats, you're welcome to send them in. And we also have some feedback from the forum.
We got one super chat here. This comes to us from Annie Rude, who says, while the Bloodline are the catalyst, should Cody also get credit as the second biggest star in wrestling? Raw's also been seen a big uptick in metrics. Thank you very much for that, Annie Rude.
I think Cody gets a lot of credit for, his, like, he is on these house shows consistently. I think he's their number 1 star on the house shows. I think he's ahead of Seth Rollins. He's ahead of Owens. He's ahead of Zayn. And I think that, he is booked as the top babyface on Raw. And I think that you're just seeing like these Bloodline segments, like you're seeing now movement in these quarters, even a non-Roman segment like this past Friday, and you're getting these big bumps. And Cody is not that level of difference maker on his quarters, but I mean, few are going to be. This is almost like a once in a decade kind of story that you're going to see this level of movement that an angle is responsible for. But I think Cody is doing excellent on his side. And for Raw, I would say even with the addition of this championship, Cody feels like the number 1 guy on Raw.
Agreed. I mean, maybe his presence feels somewhat diminished because his dance partner in Brock Lesnar is a guy who doesn't do long segments. You're lucky if you get 3-minute segment with Brock, and that's the best way to use Brock. So maybe he doesn't feel like as big of a, performer on some of these 3-hour shows, but his matches are almost always the main events. Not this time with Roman and Jay, but it's going to be the second main event. Yeah.
What if that's the challenge next week? Cody comes out and says, Brock, if I beat you at SummerSlam, you've got to get a tattoo across your chest.
On your neck.
Of a sword.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I had to pull you along for that one.
The battle of the bad tattoos.
Okay, Muggin writes, very little filler on this episode. Atlanta was popping from start to finish. SummerSlam is taking shape very well. It was a good night for the women's roster, and there's potentially 4 women's matches being made, including the grudge match between Trish and Becky, Rhea against Raquel. The Viking rules was a blast. As much as I loathe the hot potato title changes, Green and Deville winning the tag titles was necessary. Work still needs to be done to build around them. Shinsuke got a much-needed edge, and the main event blew last week's out of the water. Owens and Zayn can do no wrong when you slot them in the main event spot. Dom is not playing spoiler tomorrow, so he doesn't see Dominic taking over the reins of North America.
I don't think so either, but you never know. Let's go to Sabarov, who says, I attended the show tonight. Glad to hear you guys speak so positively of the crowd earlier on the show. It felt electric and fortunate to have great... I felt electric and fortunate to have great seats. Biggest takeaway is the number of kids in the crowd. Probably near half kids tonight. Hadn't been to like WWE since pre-COVID 2019 Starrcade Network special, and I never remembered the amount of kids I saw tonight. It's great for WWE's future. We'll keep an eye on that at Dynamite in a month in a different arena nearby. Maybe that's why these crowds sounded so loud. It's all the children in there. Maybe. The amount of
loud.
The amount of pyro was surprising. My kid and others near me recoiled at it. Very loud and overdone. I miss the days they decided to save money on that. Crowd was electric for Cody's entrance and opening segment. Just when are we going to get like a silent pyro?
I don't think that works. I don't think that's a thing.
You don't think we can invent that?
They did the whole big pyro for Chelsea and Sonya winning the titles. Like they went all out on that.
Oh, it's a big title change. Odd clean win for Gunther, who off air stood on the announcer's desk and told us it was the best day of each of our lives to be there to see him. That was on air.
Yeah, that made it. Yep.
Yeah. Tons of cheers every time Rhea appeared. Some girls near us screamed like an NSYNC or Backstreet Boys show for Rhea. No love for Ronda at all. Caught off guard by the women's tag title change. Main event second half was incredible after a slow start. Rollins' pyro went off after the show ended, and hundreds of us rushed back into the seats to see him, KO, and Sammy beat down the Judgment Day.
All right. Well, it sounded like a fun show live for those people in Atlanta. And yes, Dynamite is in Duluth, Georgia next month at the Gas South Arena for a Dynamite Rampage taping August 23rd. So there's a lot of these markets where they are running in close proximity, WWE and AEW. Like WWE is going to be in Calgary at the Saddle Dome in a couple of weeks. So, and there's many examples of that where these markets, like they're getting AEW and WWE in a fairly close time frame.
And it's okay to enjoy both, everybody.
No, not at all. You have to choose one, hate the other, and tweet about it. All right, that's going to bring an end to the show because we have about a dozen shows to do before we wake up tomorrow morning. So you can look forward to all of that. Again, 4 G1 shows on the cafe this week, along with many other shows. So a great time to join postwrestlingcafe.com, video.postwrestling.com. $6 gets you access to all of the bonus shows for the entire month, including our G1 coverage that runs through August the 13th, as we will be covering each and every G1 show. 2 are already in the bank, only 17 more to go.
Yeah, it basically gives you access for the entire 30 days. So you don't have to like even re-sign up for August. Like it just carries you over to the end of the G1, which should be when is the end of the G1?
August 13th.
Yeah. So yeah, you could just sign up and then just, get out of here.
We'll never see you again after August 13th. That's fine. We won't take it personally. But there you go. Lots of stuff to look forward to this week. Wai and I are going to be back on Wednesday with Rewind to Dynamite and the Double Shot, chatting about Abdullah the Butcher on Dark Side of the Ring. And you will hear Wai's voice on Tuesday at 3 Eastern for the Wellness Policy with the Goodman brothers and Neil Flanagan. So I look forward to listening to this.
Good brothers.
The Good Brothers. That's it.
Yeah.
All right. That's it for us. Have a good night. Have a good morning. Goodbye.